Nerd morning, everyone. My name is Jeremy. This is Joseph.
Hi, everybody.
And this is the Nerd Morning Show, a place where we celebrate nerd culture by talking about books, comics, movies, video games, and more. And today we are diving in for another one of our discussions that we've been doing on the Wheel of Time in anticipation for the show that's going to be on Amazon. And I'm just really excited for this because we're nearing the end of this series,
Very getting so close.
right?
You just finished. I'm almost done with A Memory of Light. So,
Yeah.
it's yes. And as you can see, I enjoy these chats so much that I jumped in on the road
Right.
to get this done.
Which, thank you. Thank
So
you.
you're welcome. I love it. I enjoy these chats.
Yeah.
So
One of the things that I think we should probably just note real quick here, probably haven't done as good a job as we probably should, is this will contain spoilers, so be
yes.
prepared. But yeah, so today we want to talk a little about Gathering Storm, Towers of Midnight, and entering into A Memory of Light. So those are the books that we're going to be kind of covering and talking about some elements and things from here. Are we going to cover everything in these books? No, because that's like
We'd have to actually read it and talk about it as we go.
But also it's like 55,000 words to try to cover and then try to expand on ideas from. So yeah, we just can't hit everything. But there are definitely a couple of things that I think are like exciting, worth note, interesting. One of the things is these books are where we get the transition between Robert Jordan and Brennan Sanderson. And we mentioned and talked about this a little bit before this transition, but like, what are your thoughts on that passing of the torch?
Honestly, if you didn't really dig into the small style differences that there are, you probably wouldn't notice. I barely noticed the first time I went through them.
Yeah.
Going through them again, I kind of paid attention just to kind of see what I could notice. And really, the biggest difference is some of the ways Sanderson would break up the storylines. Really, those are the biggest differences I've noticed. He did a great job trying to keep the same voice of the characters. And that's really what we're latching on to. You still see Matt as Matt and Rand as Rand. So I am very, very pleased with Sanderson's taking over the series. So
yeah, the only thing that I can really identify as clearly different is he dials up Matt's zaniness. Matt in the last three books is far more Matt than in any of the other ones. And I think that that's interesting because he saw what really, really worked with his character, like some of these weirder, sillier comments, other types of things inside of when he would be interacting with people. And he just pushed it up. You'd see him making ridiculous comments or comparisons or conversations that were, I did not think really fully manifested in the previous books, but I think that Brandon Sanderson saw what the gems that Robert Jordan was either building to or just didn't quite fully like tease out all the way.
The gems that are Matt.
Yeah, and that I think Brandon Sanderson did a great job with. I think there are some things where Brandon Sanderson's done some really good books where they're like nonsensical and with characters and stuff. And Matt, in the way that he talks, is sometimes very nonsensical. And I think that just really played well with the strengths of the character and the writer. Like those things blended perfectly. Other times there are things, elements and stuff that I'm like, I don't know what was necessarily Robert Jordan, what was Brandon Sanderson in that contrast. But that's one thing that I feel like after I've read it now several times through, that I'm like, yes, this is something that is unique, and I can clearly identify. Everything else, I'm just like, it's very like
it
the same.
feels
Yes.
like it flows together.
Yeah.
Yes,
So the
totally.
only thing that I can identify as different, clearly different, is something that I absolutely loved. So
Good,
yeah,
right?
so it was a win. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, at the beginning of Gathering Storm, we have this like orchard scene, and
Yes.
I mentioned stuff about like this transition and this evolution for Rand, but this is like when Rand becomes super, super cool. And it's like, yes, did we have to get to book 12 for this to happen? Yeah, we did. But honestly, I think there's something really big to be said about a good buildup, because it's extremely satisfying. It's emotional. Like, I get choked up on that scene at the orchard and other scenes that are related to this transition, and now him kind of manifesting his true hero nature. And
Yeah.
I don't think it would have the payoff if we didn't have 11 books of him being who he was before.
Yeah. He always had his good heart in the very middle, but as he kind of gets beaten down and beaten down and beaten down and beaten down, he develops that hard shell.
Yeah.
And when, as the Aiel say, he accepts death,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of frees him from that. He becomes, as others describe, a good sword that can bend
Mm-hmm.
but not break.
Yeah.
He can do what he needs to without being heartless. He starts to see people as people again,
Mm-hmm.
without them being just tools, and that's something the characters recognize. That's something that we can see again as readers. That
Mm-hmm.
Rand is starting to see people as people, and that's what Catswain was working towards. That's truly what Rand was working towards. He
Mm-hmm.
just kind of lost sight of the best way to do that
Yeah.
until after that moment. So it
Yeah.
it is a great moment, because we're like, oh, that he, I love him, but I hate him right now, and now we're
Yeah.
back to yay, Rand, right?
Yes. One of the things that I think is significant about this battle, and with Nynaeve, she delves Rand after she learns that she can kind of cure madness, which is cool. But we see that he is overwhelmingly covered with this madness, but also that all of the madness has been essentially attacked and defeated by this light. And I think that was just a really interesting visual that we're
Yeah.
given for this battle, because this is that's the battle of the age. I think that was the whole conflict was up on Dragon's Mount, and to have him overcome this darkness that overwhelmed him, and him overcoming that darkness. And I don't know, I just find that tremendously beautiful. That was the moment where, when we learn from the wolf dream, when Perrin witnesses it on the other side, that this is when the last hunt begins. Like,
right. The
and it
actual
was
beginning.
uh-huh.
Yeah. Because you're right, nothing else would have really mattered after that point. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the way the wolves describe it, is
Yeah.
it's either now or it all ends.
Yeah.
Because Rand would probably have broken.
Mm-hmm.
It would have gone to the so hard and non-flexible that it just would have snapped him. He probably just would have taken the step and dived into the lava of Dragon Mount and done.
Yeah.
Right. But he gains himself back.
I love
Everything
that way you phrased
that we
that. Yeah.
loved, everything we loved about Rand at the beginning, everything that his friends and family loved about him, he was able to find it again, as well as everything he's learned through this journey.
Yeah. And I think one of the things is, like, the Aes Sedai are the worst. Let's just kind of like be real about it. But they also can claim attention, claim authority, and they have some tremendous skill in those regards. And we see like other types of societies who have great capacity for wisdom or just skill in a lot of different ways. And what's interesting is when Rand finally comes to himself and discovers who he really is and has this great victory, is he kind of embodies all of the great traits of these others, and he finally gets to let those like breathe out of him, and we see him as an Aes Sedai, you know, and commanding the authority and attention of those. We see him being humble enough to bow, you know, to the is it the Crystal Throne? I think it's
the Shan-Chan,
with the Shan-Chan, and like, but yet do so really saying and showing I am bigger, I'm a bigger deal than you are, but also I'm not proud of being a bigger deal, I just am. And that was very different than like the couple of days before when it was very different.
He goes in and you will join me or else that didn't work.
No. And it terrified the Shan-Chan, and it made it so they were like, we've got to go and strike the White Tower because we have to cripple him as much as possible because he's very scary. And now they're like, oh, this is a different guy, you know, and that's cool.
That is nice. It also helps Matt, since at that point Matt has returned to them and takes his spot as the Prince of the Ravens. He was kind of in trouble, a little bit, but you know, Tavira nature as well as Rand finding his own heart again brings out that result that we're all like, come on, you know it, you just has to just get there already. Right? And it helps, it really does. He has enough humility and empathy to see what is needed with the Shan-Chan as well as many of the other rulers.
I also love how in these last couple of books we get I guess prophecy and also like just like destiny feeding itself together. There are things like the Tinkers, who we know have an interesting past and history, but one of the things that they've been searching for is the song. They don't know what the song is,
right?
But we also see two separate groups who kind of manifest the song that they've been looking for and have that type of like myth thread itself into itself, which is very, very satisfying, because we have with Rand, he starts learning how to, or I guess remembers how to sing and to grow. And then we have when started the final battle, that instead of them people,
the Ogier?
The Ogier. I just like could not think of the word. The Ogier are singing, and they sing a song of growing instead of a song of destruction in the battle, and they start like making things spontaneously grow as well, which is like the coolest thing. But this is the song the Tinkers have been searching for thousands of years, and I think it's also interesting that it used to be something so common, and now has been like suddenly rediscovered, and like that's cool. But also I'm like, had the Tinkers never gone over to an Ogier steading and see the growing? Did they? Because they didn't necessarily
we know
that,
we know they interacted, but I'm assuming that it was such a mild version compared to what was during
Yeah.
the Age of Legends
Yeah.
that they're probably like, oh, this is really cool. We like the
This,
Ogier,
but they
they're
didn't necessarily
great,
see.
but it
Yeah.
wasn't. Yeah. So,
Um.
uh, and other prophecies, there are things that come to a head that the Shan Chen with their prophecies,
Hmm.
the dark prophecies of
Hmm.
things that even some of the prophecies that the Aes Sedai keep, the one that the Borderlanders keep and keep
Yes.
secret, and
Yes.
so there's the fulfilling of prophecy, there's the misinterpretation of prophecy,
Hmm.
the just the misunderstanding because something you think is horrible the way it says, something like break or burn or destroy, when really it's referring to something that does need changing,
Yeah.
right? Just that resistance to change or anything terrible that
Hmm.
people then ascribe something ominous to and are like, no, no. But when it comes to, they start seeing, oh, okay, it
Yeah.
wasn't so bad, right?
Yeah.
That I think that's just very amazing, especially how those ideas are laced through the entire tale.
Hmm.
From the very beginning, we get some of those things, and the forethought of Robert Jordan to kind of start laying these foundations from the very beginning.
Yeah.
That that's some very creative and long-term thinking that I, as a reader, appreciate.
Yeah.
So,
I think that it's honestly quite amazing because there are stories where they set something up and then they never really get there.
uh-huh.
Or they had it just gets kind of fallen to the wayside by the other things, and here we had
Yeah.
all of these things get set up in a row, and then we get to just they all get taken.
Yep. Ding,
uh
ding, ding.
exactly.
Check them all off. Uh-huh.
It's
Yep.
it's an amazing, satisfying experience. So
It
I
is.
I love that. Um, there are other things that we get in these ones. Black Tower, which I struggled with the idea of being able to be turned against your will, which is very interesting
Uh,
because they struggle against that as well.
yep.
Conceptually, they're like, how can this be possible?
Right.
Um, and they kind of allude to the idea that, like, if you forsook the capacity to channel, you could resist. That ultimately
Right.
that's the decision: is, do I want power, or will I keep power in order, but I have to have this
And
price
then
now
be
attached.
forced.
Yeah.
Right. Uh-huh.
And I just find that very interesting because if you were given that choice, like, what would you do? Like, that kind of idea, that's very
Right.
real, where being turned against your will is very unnatural. We don't want to think about
Right.
the idea of losing our capacity to choose. That's something very sacred, I think, to
Right.
just
It's
people.
built in, it's
Um,
innate, it's part of being human.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's interesting. And that whole quest, I feel like was almost an afterthought because we get really introduced to a bunch of new characters and have this journey that's relatively self-contained, but is also something very needful for the story, and I'm really glad that we got it.
It is. And there is a fair bit of setup towards it.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure that it was some of the things in Robert Jordan's notes
Hmm.
that he left for Sanderson to use and finish.
Yeah.
Because it is such a turning point. It's a lot of richness for where did all the dreadlords come from,
Hmm.
right? Um, uh, some of them are the Black Aja, of course,
Hmm.
but a lot of them are turned by Mazrim Taim.
Yeah.
So, uh, kind of seeing that circle and the setup of it, of the Black Tower, the Red Sisters being sent there.
Hmm.
Uh,
Tons of payoff moments in
it's a
here.
lot of payoff. It really is. So
I really think that's interesting. One of the biggest things, the namesake for book 13 is the Towers of Midnight, where we go and save Moraine. And I think this is interesting for so many levels. One of the big things is Matt finally fulfilling that last bit of prophecy for him and losing his eye to save the world. And I think it's interesting that how that goes into the discussions of the future and the Dragon's Peace, because things were falling apart.
Yeah.
And Moraine walks in and is like, bam, things are all better now. And
she brings just that little bit of outside influence, especially to help calm Egwene down. That's my most frustrating part with Memory of Light. I'm like, Egwene, you've become all of the worst parts of Aes Sedai. Stop it.
Yes, seriously. And I just love these moments where you kind of go, if this one thing didn't happen, how the world would shift and turn. And they really play with that a lot here. Because we, like, in the last couple of books, there's multiple moments like this. And this one is kind of like, would Rand go and fight the final battle if she didn't show up? Would the Dragon's Peace have been built? Partially,
probably,
but maybe not. Maybe they would have walked off in a huff. Would they have all of the demands being met, thus having demands being met ultimately, though, being not with him? Would they have battled in a unified front? Maybe not. Would they have these other things? And the thing is would Rand have ultimately succeeded? Probably, but would he have been like reborn at the end? Maybe not. Would they have an age of peace? Maybe not.
Maybe
would
not. Would
the world have been scoured and destroyed? I don't know.
Or the way Avienda saw it in the crystal pillars when she went through the second time. Of the Aiel withering and dying, and the peace lasting barely a generation. There's a lot of that's turning point moments. Is how Rand had it figured out at the moment she went through the crystal pillars. Is what she saw, right? So. When she adds the Aiel to it to be the peacekeepers, I think that was that turning point.
Exactly.
And that's something we'll have to discuss later, is what happens after. Where does it go? But anyway,
what's the future?
I
think that's really, really interesting. And that there is these hair point moments. Like we were talking about, like, this is a 5-minute difference in time between Avienda saying we want to be included and Moraine showing up. Two things that happened that within a 5-minute moments changed the course of history 2 different times, and hopefully in a better way. But that's huge. That's significant. That's fascinating.
And it changes the feel of the story too. And Sanderson does it so well. He's writing this build up of Egwene. Rand isn't this horrible monster jerk that you think he is. I don't know why she thinks we have to force him. We have to scare him into doing it my way because I'm the Aes Sedai. We have to get all the armies and all this support and stuff when she's not fully against the idea of breaking the seals. She just wants to be in charge of it. So you're just like, and then Moraine comes in and it all changes and everything feels better after that. That's such good writing to sway our emotions like that. It's just so well done, because right now that's exactly where I'm at this moment is at that debate, and I'm just like, and
I know.
just comes in and you're like, okay, everything's fine now.
Right.
And it's so amusing.
And with that, like, Rand really played Egwene very deftly to be able to gather the nations of the world together and using her for that purpose. Obviously it almost backfires, but that's, that's how that goes. I think he had higher trust for her, and it was not delivered well. But going back with Moraine and how she actually manages to get to that meeting, we have Matt and we have Tom and their adventure. And I think that this is interesting. Honestly, we have a bunch of parallel world ideas being played with throughout the whole series, and it's really interesting to see. And with that, we have this tower that they enter into, and they're the Elfin and the Aelfin, those guys, the snakes and the foxes. And that journey, that quest, that world is really cool, and it makes an amazing adventure. We finally
one of the best side adventures we have in this story. Oh, by far.
We finally get to see Jane Farstrider as like claiming his selfness,
his heritage. That's something I caught this time I didn't before. He asks to tell the lands people, their country escapes me. Anyway, he's apparently one of that nationality, of Land's nationality, because he tells them,
the Borderlanders of that particular group.
I'm sorry, everyone.
I know
you're all yelling at your device saying it's this, and I can't place it. Malkir, there we go.
Yes, there we go.
To tell the Malkiri that he died clean.
Yes.
Which was so interesting to me that I'm like, what happened? Was he like banished or
ultimately he has this like name as this great adventurer who's seen everywhere and done everything, but we don't know what like kicked him off to have that adventure to begin with, and he seems to be at this quest of like regaining an honor of some sort, and this great battle to help save Moraine, and being able to have this whole experience makes him feel like I have fulfilled whatever it was that I was supposed to fulfill. And it's also interesting because a lot of the legends that we have, or legendary heroes, are from far in the past, and here we had this living legend, and it's kind of cool to see that in this world, because we had these other legendary heroes essentially being built before our eyes, but he has a different perspective, and we get a different perspective by following him along through this, and in from a sideways perspective.
Totally fun. I really love Neil's character and Noel's character. And then Jane Farstrider, we're like,
what's another thing is we get all of this like lore and legend and myth and all that kind of stuff being like put out on us in the story, and there are things like the game of Snakes and Foxes is like, okay, this is just a fun little game, it keeps people happy, and it's just an addition part of the story.
Everybody knows it. It's just
but then they go and they have this thing that they played with, and then they deliver on it, something that I didn't expect or require to have something deliver on. And it did. And that was amazing that something a little bit like that had that same thing. It was very, very satisfying. And something I don't see other writers fully taking advantage of in some of their stories.
It's true. Except for Sanderson, and there could be others, and please, if
there are a lot of things where they do pay off, but there are stories every once in a while where I'm like, they just like, that was a thing, and they could have done some more with it, but
in my experience, Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson do this the best. Which is probably why he was the greatest pick to finish this story.
There are lots of other good things here. One of the things that I think needs to be talked about, and this is something you had brought up to me as saying we've got to discuss, is the Tom and Moraine thing.
Right? My goodness. They get out of the tower, and like the first thing out of Moraine's mouth is "Marry me, Tom." Like, where did that come from? They haven't seen each other since Moraine left with Rand from the Stone of Tyr.
Yeah.
That's clear back at the very beginning of book 4.
Yeah. And
everything before that, they were separated for all of book 3 and most of book 2. Tom barely is in book 2 and 3.
Yeah.
They only see each other again in the Stone of Tyr, other than the first half of the book of book 1. I'm like, what did I miss?
Yeah,
I just
totally.
can't see, where is this? Oh, dearest Tom.
Yeah, I was reading
what
through
did I miss?
this read through looking for this relationship,
right?
because it threw me for a loop multiple times, through all the readings, and I'm like, okay, there's got to be something here that sets this up, some type of sweet talk or other types of things while they're journeying and adventuring, and I did not find it. I'm cool with the relationship. I'm happy,
right?
But I didn't get much to set this up.
Yeah. The only thing I found was one time Tom comments, she's a very well set up woman if she weren't Aes Sedai, which could mean anything. I could say that about any lady. Oh, she's a really great lady.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I'm going to marry her.
No. And even if it was like, she's really smoking hot, like, if that's his intent, you can say that and not decide that you want to be in love with that person. And it's just, I was not prepared for that.
Find it.
But their relationship is cool. That's happy. Maybe it was Severian nature working on them both. What I do see that we get a lot from Tom is those darn Aes Sedai. We get that over and over again. So this, I feel like, is a really big flip.
It really is. Yeah.
So, but I mean, it's cool. It's cool. I'm happy with it, but I did not anticipate it.
There's no build up for it.
Yes.
None.
And you had another thing you wanted to bring up.
The other thing I wanted to bring up, I mentioned it earlier on when we first met Varen, this read through. Varen is my favorite Aes Sedai.
Okay.
I just love Varen because of her death scene.
Yeah.
She goes to Egwene. Huge spoilers. If you've not read this and you don't want this spoiler, stop now. But Varen goes to Egwene, taking poison that will kill her within an hour.
Yeah.
And basically says, all right, I'm Black Aja, by the way. And here are all the rest of the Black Aja.
Yeah.
In the tower. Have at it.
Yeah.
And the way she explains it, I got into a situation that it was either join or die. So, a lot of us would think, the honorable thing to do is to die and not give in.
Yeah.
And most of the time, that's probably the right choice. But she chose to be a spy and to collect all of this information on the Black Aja with this complete intent before she died to pass it on to the leadership and wipe it out.
Yeah.
And
which is cool.
It's cool. That would be such dedication, so much dedication that you're willing to take your own life. That's like the exact opposite of everything every dark friend thinks. They become a dark friend because they want to never die.
Yeah.
It's
the reason why they chose that choice of serve or die is because they're like, I want to live and I'm going to keep on serving because I want to live. Then their logic is that way. Yeah.
So that part just hits me so hard every time. And her warder also, yes, he's also a dark friend and he wanted out also. So they're working together in this. uh, you know, the Black wanted Varen to throw off Egwene's search for the Black Aja when they were sent out of the tower.
Yeah.
But she adds something more. She gives her the ring to enter Telayan Riyadh.
Yes.
And
yes.
giving them that advantage. So she really plays both sides, but she does it so well. And I find so much honor in that I'm just like, Varen, you're my favorite. You just are.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my
I've got
Varen
like
rant.
tons of questions when it comes to Varen, and she's very interesting. She was first introduced in The Great Hunt, so she's been there really from the beginning. She was the one who, obviously, like as you mentioned, gave the ring and has, I think, a really interesting teaching moment there with her, and is guiding her in a really cool way at that moment when she gives the ring. She also was one of the ones to go into the Two Rivers and to collect new channelers from there. She also was one of the first ones to swear fealty to Rand, and in some very not so Aes Sedai ways, using compulsion helps other people swear to him as well, obviously maybe to help lift their burdens to some degree, but also to build a loyalty base for Rand. And she gives that letter to Matt, which she didn't understand Matt perfectly, because Matt's a man of his word. And though curiosity, like she was trying to bounce between these two ideals, and she thought it was like this, but it was like this. And that definitely
that hurt Tyrion a little bit, but
but like ultimately there are only really a few of these like side characters that we get throughout the whole journey. There are a lot of them that like they're big and significant for a book or two. And she's significant all the way through and has a great journey. I'm like, she's 151 when she dies. How long was she a dark friend? Was it
we don't know.
Was it 100 years? Was it 50 years?
I would assume it was a fairly good amount of time, because she identifies 200 plus
majority of ones. And that's interesting. And I don't know, she is a cool character, and also she's definitely a side character. In the scale of significant characters, she's lower on the totem pole, but she has such a huge role. And that's one of the coolest things about the Wheel of Time, is this whole world, and it's a world story. And this is touching into more of the final battle, which isn't everything that we're going to really be talking about today. But when Rand fights the Dark One, he's like, it's not my story, it's the story of so and so and so and so and so and so. And he goes and kind of paints this picture of it being the story of this age and all of these characters. And the first time I read this book, I was kind of like, why don't we get more of Rand? He's the main character. What's up with this? And I was kind of flummoxed, because I've not seen a story that was like this before. And now I'm like, it is about Matt and him being a begrudging hero. And it is about this girl who like is determined to fight against odds. And it is about all this stuff, it's very satisfying. But Varen's journey is just as valid as any of the other ones in this thing, because it is the story of this age. And that transformation, that journey, that experience is what this story is about. It isn't about one character, it's about all of them. And that's unique. That is very unique. I can't think of a story that does this to this level.
No.
I have nothing else to compare it to.
And it makes the 15 books worth it. A lot of times people are like, it's 3 books, or it's too long and it's not worth it, it gets too boring. But not this one, because all of the characters are so valid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, and Varian Matthew is just a great example of that.
Yes.
Well, for the sake of time, we're gonna be wrapping up here. Joseph, any last minute thoughts?
I can't wait to finish it. Hope to finish it here in the next couple days, and it will be the fastest I've ever gone through the Wheel of Time. So I'm excited.
That's awesome. For me, as I finished, I'm like, I'm ready to start in again. Like, it's such a good series, and I've loved doing this read through. We're going to be jumping in with talking about the final battle in another video and maybe a couple more discussion things in the future. So stick around for those. Thank you, everybody. Let us know your thoughts. Put them in the comments as well. Find more content at nerdmorning.com/links, and also check out @nerdmorning on places like Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, TikTok, and more. Thank you again, Joseph, so much. And we'll talk to everyone another time.
Later.